Dude, 3D platformers are all just meant for kids at this point. Like, just think about it. As humans, we physically have no similarities to any form of platforming character. Their durability, acrobatic ability, and speedy demeanor just completely defy anything us humans can do. But kids, their entire life is an acrobatic spectacle. Just look at these kids here, all standing perfectly on the side of a dam, licking the leftover salt from the leaky water the dam can't contain. And don't even get me started on how they can just backflip after jumping on an NPC like that. Clearly, kids just understand the platforming mindset better than any of us humans ever could, and that's why I'm going to advocate for us to have a 3D platformer with a goat as the main character.
Dude, that's already a thing.
What do you mean, those aren't goats? Wait, corn, unicorn, kids, a young goat, 64 and N64 aesthetic. Dude, that makes so much sense. In a world where Mario is missing, not like that, and Banjo died, we were having to rely on indie devs to create those 3D jump obstacle courses with random objects to collect at the end that we so desire. So when I saw this game parading itself as a corny N64 game for kids, I was confused on why they would call their game that, but then this video's intro happened and now I get what they meant. So, Cornkidz, a short little 3D platformer that is not as short as it should be, because it only has 4 levels, but somehow 3 of them only take up half the time you're going to be playing the game, then the other level takes up the other half. And while I could go over the sticky note tutorial level, the 1 life per attempt Tower of Anxiety level, and the final boss tower level, just me reading them out kind of explains them well enough, and while it might sound like I'm downplaying them, Wulo's Hollow, the main level, is just so dense with content that they can't really compete fairly, which is why instead of doing a full review of this game, I'm just going to point out a few things that gives this level so much of its longevity, and why I believe this level being the focus is actually a good thing, even though I love some variety. Why are we showing that? That doesn't disprove anything, I still like variety. Dude, that's not a coat. So firstly, before I hype up the game, we gotta hate on it a little bit. Call me old-fashioned, but I really don't like the gothic architecture aesthetic. Like, yeah, it's really well done, and it looks beautiful, but that obviously doesn't matter. So since it's not my personal visual preference, I have to dock points. I'm also docking points because a lot of the gothic sections have a red tint, and I'm colorblind to that color, so clearly this was a targeted attack to my kind, but that leads to my first positive. Though the aesthetic might not be my cup of tea, this level has so much variety in setting overall that even if it attacked my tastes personally in one area, it still had places that fit my tastes. These heavily wooded and vibrant green areas, an oddly industrial looking building that says it's a zoo, and dirt covered areas that look like a wasteland, which feels lazy at first, but then you get the drill ability and the aesthetic fits perfectly. Like, I didn't even mention the inside of the tree section you climb to get to this level's boss yet, and we still had so much variety that most games would have made all these sections individual levels, but in Cornkidz, they just casually stitch them together seamlessly. So as I said before, this game has some really impressive density.
The main level is just so dense with content.
The main collectible XP is scattered very liberally across this level, meaning most areas that are off the beaten path don't waste your time and usually have at least 1 bit of XP to give that feeling of progress constantly. That is, unless you go back to the same area multiple times because you don't trust yourself to be thorough the first time around, but surely that would never happen. Though, seriously, while some areas are locked off by progression items, I didn't ever feel like going off the beaten path wasn't rewarded in some way in this level, and that's really the main requirement for a level that's going to take up half the game's runtime to hit, because you know, as they always say, if it ain't full of loot, it's getting the boot. And sometimes they also say, if your partner isn't treating you right, level up and date their parents. The third trait is puzzles, but not like the explicit puzzles, but more or less the times where you would see an XP or collectible far away and have to infer on the area around it to figure out how to make it to said item. Usually a lot of games have their collectibles in areas that are essentially just puzzle rooms, but Cornkidz blends them into the level seamlessly by making use of all its mechanics to hide them in plain sight. Though this level did kinda have one quote-unquote lazy puzzle room, where an NPC tells you a fence is close to falling off, implying that you should hit it off, but instead of listening to them or the blatantly loud fence creaking noise, I decided to do a precise jump around it, totally because I wanted a challenge, and not because I was too dense to solve the easiest puzzle in the game. Which, since I did just avoid that quote-unquote puzzle room, it doesn't even count as a puzzle, meaning my point still stands that the level's puzzles are really well done and hidden. The most interesting part of this level was where you have to backtrack through the whole thing. but not really. At a certain point, you find this area that allows you to mirror the level completely, which at first I hated because I thought it was going to drag the level out way further, but mirroring the level actually only changes one thing.
And that one thing's actually really cool to realize if you play the game like blind, so just spoiler just in case.
Your spin rotation. So it only specifically changes the spin cranks, which we can now spin counterclockwise.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, bro.
Which was actually foreshadowed by this pig on a merry-go-round, which gives you 2 rewards depending on whether you spin him clockwise or counterclockwise. It kinda sounds dumb, hyping up spin direction, but you heard how genuinely hyped I was, so take that at face value. Though, now unfortunately, the joy of that rotational realization is now lost on y'all who ignored the spoiler warning. So at this point, you probably should still play the game since I only spoiled one aspect of the game and am barely giving away anything the game has to offer. And lastly, let's talk about the final boss I mentioned earlier.
The tree section you climb to get to this level's boss.
Yeah. The lead up to this boss is a tree with a massive group of logs and owl's nest stacked like the stairway of a tower. Now that I mentioned tower, 2 of the other levels also have towers. But they still felt unique, just a little funny. I didn't realize the dev loved towers so much. But yeah, after the pre-sanctum, you make it to the boss sanctum, which has the Owlo who... I'm sorry about that, I said who after I said owl, because owls say who was shown to us as our final objective right as we entered the level for the first time. The fight itself is pretty standard, just 3 hits while platforming in between each hit. But the design of this owl is where I feel this fight shines the most. Its facial animations hits this weird spot of feeling kinda uncanny, but in the best way possible. And with the dreamlike setting this game has, the awooga eyes from the owl really ties it all together with a neat little bow tie, like your ring bearer nephew at your cousin's wedding. And yeah, that's all I got the trauma dump on y'all. And in summary, if the main level is so good, the overall game is probably good too. Thank you to Luca and Stevie John for y'all's membership. This month, y'all are the goats. Did y'all catch that? I called y'all goats because... Yeah, I'm gonna stop him right there. And if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. So I called y'all goats, which also means greatest of all time. So I'm being really clever with that statement. And I think you see my logic in saying that overall.